Greetings, friends. I am Vitaly Pornikov. Russian propagandists, among whom you can even spot the talking head of the local foreign ministry, Maria Zakharova, are reproaching Emmanuel Macron and his wife for having an argument at the moment the presidential plane landed in the capital of Vietnam. Some earlier, practically the same sources discussed the possibility that Macron and his Western colleagues used drugs during their visit to the Ukrainian capital. At that time, it was about a napkin and the Elysee Palace. They had to explain that, of course, there were no drugs on it. Now, about the first footage that showed Emmanuel Macron and his wife disembarking from the presidential plane. We fully understand why all of this is happening in the first place. Against the backdrop of Russian propaganda's efforts to portray Europeans who continue to support Ukraine in its resistance to Russian aggression, and thus hinder Donald Trump's peacekeeping efforts as drug addicts, and cannot control their emotions when interacting with their own spouses. It looks like a perfectly logical continuation of the entire propaganda campaign we've encountered in recent weeks. And in this campaign, as we can see, is by no means only Maria Zakharova. Even Sergei Lavrov explains that when Donald Trump accused Putin of being insane, he was upset by the efforts of his European colleagues. Tear off your own peacekeeping initiatives. But understanding the essence of Russian propaganda is the task of those who study it. And I can only express my deep sympathy for people who are forced to rewatch TV broadcasts featuring such monsters as Vladimir Solovyov or Dmitry Kiselyov, or to take an interest in the briefings of the irrepressible Maria Zakharova, who seems ready to crawl into any bed and make her voice heard from any crack. First and foremost, I want to talk about family values. The Elysee Palace, of course, may say that we witnessed a playful exchange between the President of France and his wife. And even if it wasn't a joke, but a real quarrel between the spouses that accidentally ended up in front of the TV cameras. So what's the big deal? Spouses? If Maria Zakharova and those who give her assignments in the Russian presidential administration didn't know this, sometimes people actually do quarrel. A lot of things happen in family life. But I'd really like to know, just out of pure curiosity, who does such a champion and defender of family values as Vladimir Putin argue with? With whom exactly? The last time anything was heard about Vladimir Putin's family values, we found out when he, together with his now ex-wife, approached those same television cameras and announced that he was divorcing his wife. And his press secretary was forced to explain his boss's behavior by saying that Vladimir Vladimirovich is very busy with state affairs. And in general, he's probably married to Russia. Well, who else would he marry? Fortunately, Russia is feminine. But if it were, say, Pakistan, well, let's not dwell on the sad things. In any case, it's clear that there is no traditional family life for Vladimir Putin. And by the way, there wasn't any even before the divorce. Although all attempts to find out how the president of the Russian Federation actually lives and what values he really holds have run into resistance from the Federal Security Service of the Russian Federation, where Putin himself comes from, and of course, censorship. When one of my colleagues wrote in a newspaper about a possible relationship between Putin and the gymnast Alina Kabayeva, he was, of course, fired, and the newspaper was soon shut down as well, so as not to irritate the high-ranking lover. So whether Putin is the unofficial husband of Kabayeva or of any other female citizens of the Russian Federation, we do not know. And perhaps until the end of the Russian president's political career, we will never find out. Who are the children? Or the grandchildren of Vladimir Putin? Does he communicate with his family? That, too, is unknown to anyone. Putin receives foreign dignitaries in proud solitude at an extremely long table, which only serves as a reminder that this man has absolutely nothing to do with family values, that he spends his entire life in formal solitude, that all his achievements as a family man means meeting with Alexander Lukashenko. And again, it's clear that everyone builds their life the way they want. And of course, there's nothing shameful about being without a spouse at Putin's age. It's just that in that case, You shouldn't be defending family values and telling others how they should live. That's the real issue with the Putin system and Putin's propaganda. People who serve someone who has no spouse, who divorced his own wife after decades of a merely formal marriage, just to feel free and not be burdened by affairs or coming home late from work, try to lecture those who live an entirely a classic family life. These so-called champions of family values, like Macron or other Western leaders, their family lives are actually well known. Their spouses are by their side during official visits and in private interactions. There's no doubt that they have serious and deep relationships with their life partners. And you could see this, for example, to be continued both during election campaigns in France, in the United States, and in other Western countries. The West, which is constantly accused by Russian propagandists of corruption and depravity, actually demonstrates a model of genuine love, partnership, and yes, even quarrels between high-ranking spouses, because they are real people. Instead of just being functionally preoccupied with plundering their own country, as is the case with the Russian Federation or other former Soviet republics that continue to live by the logic of authoritarianism and corruption at the very highest level. And of course, in a situation where the state is essentially an offshoot of the mafia, no one is interested in any family values. What matters is simply how to make more money, to get pleasure from an illegal life with illegal money, and to an even greater extent, to fool those suckers who will support you. Not even vote for you, but simply endure a country where there are no elections at all. And of course, the main problem of this country is that it has given Emmanuel Macron's wife slaps the French president. Or maybe she didn't after all. Thank you, friends. Stay tuned to this channel. Subscribe, follow me on social media and on Patreon. Buy me a coffee, Don't Tella, which helps support these resources, and use the sponsorship feature right here on YouTube. Awesome.